Howdy y'all, back again with a grim fairy tale, that is. So this time, this is going to be a discussion, not an actual tale. This is a discussion. I'm going to try and catch up all the discussions, and then we'll do tale and discussion back to back after I get caught up. This discussion is on the tale of The Rabbit's Bride, which you can find in my Storytime playlist. Give me just a little bit of coffee. Discussing is thirsty work. Alright, The Rabbit's Bride. Also, these story tales and discussions about story tales are not intended for children. Excuse me. And as with all of these stories, I do discuss them briefly in the story time. But I'm going to change that up, and I'm going to just have the story and then do the discussion. So this is just only the discussion, and I'll probably hit on some of the same points. Okay, so the rabbit robs a garden every day. There's a woman and her daughter. They live in a place. They grow a garden. The rabbit robs it. Every day he comes. Every day the girl goes out to chase him off. Every day he asks her to come with him, and each day she refuses. This happens 3 times. Now, in fairy tales, 3, 3, 3, always 3. It seems like 3 is a magic number. Things happen after the 3rd time, after the 3rd question, after the 3rd answer. So after the 3rd time this happens, she agrees to go. He says, "Will you go?" And she goes. She seems compelled to go, in fact. The 3rd exchange, the whole situation never varies at all, which is not unusual. It's almost like stanzas or refrains of a song, which I think is maybe left over from the oral traditions, because many times an oral tradition will put something into a cadence or a sing-song type. Even if it's not an actual song, it will be kind of repetitive so that you can remember it. There are certain key notes that'll be repeated over and over. And we'll experience some more stories later on where they sing little parts of a song, which key events to happen, or anyway, so always with the 3 times. And she's compelled on the 3rd exchange to agree to go with him. And to me, this has overtones of a spell or an enchantment. 3rd time's the charm. But then also, I think that it could be, type, like I said previously, type of a refrain, just repeating in the oral tradition. She seems sad. She does not want to be his wife, and yet submits to him. Why? This is very curious indeed to me. Perhaps this is alluding to the feeling of being trapped in a marriage or forced into a marriage many women must have experienced at this time. During the time when these stories were collected, and up until fairly recently in human history, when you view it, in total, people didn't get married for love. They got married for lots of reasons, but rarely because the 2 individuals loved each other. They married for family, they married for wealth, they married for responsibilities. There was 100 reasons people got married, but really almost nobody got married for love. It was your duty to marry well the person you were supposed to marry. So I think that many women in this time, and up really until modern times, felt that they had to marry, and they rarely had a choice in who they married, and so of course would feel compelled and trapped by family duty, responsibility, perhaps poverty. Who knows their situation? But trapped in a marriage or forced into a marriage, they must have experienced. And it's telling, when all the options are exhausted in the story, that only marrying the villain, the rabbit that's coming to steal the cabbages. The only thing that will stop this from happening is she should marry him. Now, what difference does it make if she's married to him whether he'll take the cabbages still? Does he just stop stealing the cabbages of his mother-in-law and steal someone else's cabbages? Doesn't seem to make any sense. But they have to marry the villain. And when she does marry the villain, this assumedly stops the cycle. I think that it wasn't uncommon for a girl and possibly her family to feel harassed by a suitor pressing for marriage and won't take no for an answer, especially if the girl and her family, because this was apparently a widow woman and her daughter, if the girl and her family are impoverished and a wealthy suitor comes along, how could she refuse? Even if she despised the man, she would rescue her family from poverty if she married this man, this wealthy suitor that's pressing her for marriage. So I feel like this tale, this Rabbit's Bride, is a compelling tale about how women were subjugated and forced to marry because of economic and social reasons. And this, like I've said many times, fairy tales try to push your buttons, and this one is pushing the buttons of young women in unhappy marriages that they did not choose for themselves. So when she gets back with the rabbit to his hutch, because that was the deal, it was like, will you go to the rabbit hutch? No. Will you? No. Will you? Yes. And she goes. Okay, so when they get to the hutch, he immediately starts calling everyone in for the wedding. Now, she has not been asked, nor has she agreed to this marriage, and obviously does not want to be there or marry him. It says, the maiden was sad because she was so lonely. Now, that's got to relate to someone in an unhappy marriage. She was sad because she was so lonely. Imagine the loneliness of a life trapped in an unwanted marriage. Surely many women in this time related to this maiden, which caused this tale to be retold. He keeps telling her to get up and join in the celebration, but she just cries or she says nothing and he goes away. So he is expecting her to act happy at being forced to marry. And I'm sure this was an expectation of young women in this situation. They would not be allowed to express grief while they were marrying someone. They would have to act like this is something they were into and wanted to do. Although if they didn't, they probably would have been dragged there to do it anyway. So he keeps telling her to get up and join the celebration, but she just cries or says nothing. And in a true demonstration of just how much he doesn't notice, she makes a straw dummy and she gives it a red mouth, that's what it says, and dresses it in her clothes. I think that's kind of telling that it's just a placeholder. It doesn't matter. This straw figure dressed as a woman with a red mouth is just a placeholder there. It could be any female form. She's unimportant as a human being, as a person. Her importance and worth is as a bride, not as an individual. And so again, he becomes enraged at her silence and uncooperative behavior, and he hits the dummy and he knocks its head off. And he thought he killed her, and he went away very sad. That's what he said. It knocks her head off, and he thought he killed her. He thought he killed his bride, and he went away very sad. So that, to me, is like, what? You know, he hit her, and he knocked her head off. What kind of creature can do this? We're talking about a rabbit. Obviously a ginormous rabbit, because she sat on his tail and rode on it when he took her away. So he's got to at least have a tail big enough for a girl to sit upon. And obviously, you know, if he is big enough to strike her and knock her head off and not be completely astounded at the fact that he's decapitated a human being with one blow, that's just, you know, let go. And so, but, you know, this seems to be, you know, one of those things in fairy tales that is just, that's the way that it is. And so she's off the hook and apparently goes home for her happily ever after, which is kind of strange because the rabbit is sad but not gone. And apparently he's still living in the same area and they are presumably still growing cabbages. So what's to stop this from happening again? Yes, she escaped an unwanted marriage, but she's still in the same situation, really, that she was in before. Because, I mean, if she just went right back, waiting for the next rabbit to put her in a situation she doesn't want to be in. So, yeah, I think that this, you know, these were my thoughts on the Rabbit's Bride, and I think that this is a very strong statement about being trapped in a marriage, being in an unwanted marriage, feeling like there's no way to get out of a situation except by marriage. And so that's a few of my thoughts on the Rabbit's Bride. And I thank y'all for joining me. And I will see you next time. Y'all be sweet.